The radio crackled, fragmented Japanese commands abruptly cut off by static. Over the airwaves came a chilling urgency, reports of entire bunkers engulfed in flames, their occupants screaming into the abyss. A grainy photograph surfaced days later, showing a smoldering fortress reduced to a twisted skeleton of steel and ash. The paradox is stark. How could these supposedly impregnable fortifications, designed to withstand bombardment and siege, be turned into blazing tombs overnight? The image hints at a new kind of weapon, one that defied conventional warfare and shattered the Japanese defensive illusion. What was this infernal force, and why did no early warning signal its arrival? The broken radio logs conceal more than just messages. They veil the onset of a terrifying battlefield evolution that the Japanese command was utterly unprepared for. Behind the scenes, the United States military had quietly developed a radical innovation: the flamethrower tank. Conceived in the war rooms of the Pacific Theater, its origins trace back to a desperate need to neutralize entrenched Japanese bunkers on islands like Iwo Jima and Saipan. Engineers at a secret facility modified existing Sherman tanks, mounting flamethrowers capable of projecting napalm-based fire streams over 100 yards. This weapon was not a mere upgrade. It was a strategic gamble born of frustration with endless casualties inflicted by well-fortified enemy positions. Official blueprints reveal the integration of a thick-walled fuel reservoir and armored nozzles, but also a glaring vulnerability: a complex fuel system that, if hit, could transform the tank into a fiery coffin. Why did the decision-makers risk such a volatile design? Was there desperation behind this innovation, or an overconfidence that underestimated the foe's adaptability? The flamethrower tanks, known to the crews as Zippos, were beasts of destruction, but far from flawless. They weighed over 40 tons, their turrets encumbered by fuel, tanks and flame projectors, limiting their maneuverability in the dense jungle terrain. Their primary weapon was a 76mm main gun, but it was the flame nozzle, capable of spewing an 18-second blast of burning napalm, that terrified the enemy. Despite the psychological edge, the tanks had to operate within 100 meters of a target to be effective, exposing them to deadly anti-tank rifles and mines. Japanese engineers quickly studied captured models, noting weak points such as thin armor plating around the flamethrower apparatus. Yet the US military published sparse technical manuals deliberately redacting critical details to maintain secrecy. How did these mechanical giants overcome their design flaws in combat? And why did the Japanese fail to anticipate the full scale of this fiery menace in their defensive preparations? The first deployment of flamethrower tanks occurred during the brutal assault on Okinawa in April 1945. A squadron of modified Shermans spearheaded the attack on a network of underground bunkers near Shuri Castle. Initial intelligence predicted slow progress, expecting the tanks to serve mainly as infantry support. Instead, radio intercepts captured frantic Japanese commands as bunkers erupted in flames, forcing defenders into suffocating smoke-filled chambers. Eyewitnesses recalled the overwhelming heat and the surreal sight of concrete structures melting from intense fire. The operations after action report noted a near 60% reduction in infantry casualties compared to previous assaults. Yet, among the victorious American crews, there was unease. These tanks were fragile and uniquely vulnerable to counterattacks. What tactical misjudgments allowed these weapons to catch the Japanese so off guard? Could the outcome have been different if the defenders had been better prepared for this infernal technology? In response, Japanese commanders scrambled to devise countermeasures. Field manuals issued in late 1945 recommended dispersing bunkers and reinforcing ventilation shafts to prevent the spread of fire. Engineers experimented with sealing bunker entrances with sandbags and installing water reservoirs to douse flames rapidly. Some units tested portable flamethrowers to engage the tanks at close quarters, while others employed anti-tank mines more aggressively. Still, the psychological impact remained devastating. Soldiers reported paralyzing fear at the sight of the flamethrower tanks' advancing fire. Radio transcripts reveal a growing desperation, with some commanders questioning the efficacy of traditional defensive tactics. Why did these countermeasures fail to halt the tanks' advance? Did doctrine and culture blind the Japanese to the true scale of the threat, or was it simply a matter of dwindling resources and time? The turning point came during the Battle of Iwo Jima, where the Japanese defenders faced a relentless barrage of flamethrower tanks penetrating their labyrinth of caves and bunkers. Archival maps detail a shrinking network of holding points as fire engulfed what was once considered an impenetrable fortress. The Japanese command issued new protocols, ordering troops to fight in smaller groups and avoid enclosed spaces. But the damage was irreversible. Fuel shortages and attrition eroded the defenders' ability to counterattack or repair fortifications. A destroyed communications bunker, captured in a rare color photograph, shows scorched documents and a charred radio set, evidence of the complete breakdown in coordination. How did the loss of these command centers influence the broader campaign? And were these flamethrower tanks the true instrument of collapse beyond the well-documented artillery and infantry assaults? Each episode is a document I pull from the dust of the archives. Share your own stories. Many of you have relatives who lived through that time, and your words help connect personal memory with archival evidence. Stay curious. Subscribe so you don't miss the next episode tomorrow. In the aftermath of Iwo Jima, the true extent of the flamethrower tanks' devastation became impossible to ignore. Japanese survivors recounted how entire platoons vanished inside their own fortifications, consumed not by enemy gunfire, but by waves of searing flame that left nothing but blackened rubble. A series of intercepted letters from a regional commander, smuggled out through underground channels, described the psychological torment inflicted by these machines. Men refusing to enter bunkers, preferring death in the open air. The smell of burning flesh and melted equipment lingered long after each assault, haunting even those who escaped. Yet, the official Japanese reports remained curiously silent on the full scope of the damage. What was the reason for this omission? Was it shame, disbelief, or a calculated attempt to preserve morale in the face of an unstoppable inferno? Meanwhile, American engineers pushed the flamethrower tank concept further, adapting variations with extended fuel capacities and improved armor around the flame projector, seeking to reduce vulnerability while maximizing firepower. Photographs from testing grounds show tanks engulfed in daytime smoke trails, each burst of flame a terrifying ballet of destruction. But the balance remained precarious. Too much fuel meant greater risk of catastrophic explosion if hit, too little reduced effectiveness against hardened defenses. Reports from tank commanders revealed a creeping dread. Each mission was a gamble with fire itself, where a single lucky shot could ignite the tank's belly. How did crews reconcile the fear of their own weapon turning against them with the necessity of wielding such deadly force? And what does this say about the blurred lines between technology and human endurance in war? Japanese tactical manuals recovered post-war suggest a gradual shift from static defense to guerrilla-style resistance within bunker complexes. Rather than holding ground, defenders began using tunnels and hidden exits to evade flamethrower tanks, relying on ambushes and close-quarter combat to neutralize their firepower. A faded map, annotated by a battalion leader, marks secret supply caches and escape routes designed to outmaneuver the incendiary threat. Yet these adaptations came too late to stem the tide. The tank's psychological impact persisted, eroding the will to fight as much as the physical infrastructure. How did this forced evolution in Japanese tactics influence the broader Pacific campaign? Did the flamethrower tanks inadvertently shape the strategic outcome of the war beyond immediate battlefield gains? Captured Japanese propaganda leaflets from 1945 reveal a thinly veiled attempt to demonize the flamethrower tanks, branding them as devil machines wielding hellfire. The leaflets, illustrated with grotesque sketches of burning soldiers trapped underground, aimed to bolster resistance, but also betrayed a profound fear of this new weapon. In private diaries, some officers lamented the inadequacy of conventional arms against a technology that seemed to defy the laws of war and humanity. Still, the Imperial Command refused to disclose the full impact to the public or even many military units, perpetuating an image of unwavering resilience. Why maintain this facade in the face of such overwhelming material and psychological defeat? Was it a cultural imperative or a strategic calculation to maintain cohesion amid collapse? As the war drew to a close, the flamethrower tanks had left a legacy both tangible and spectral. Scorched battlefields, shattered bunkers, and the haunting memories of those who faced them testified to a weapon that redefined siege warfare. But beyond the physical destruction lay a deeper imprint, the realization that technology could break not just walls, but the very spirit of defense. An engineer's confidential report, buried for decades, hinted at the early recognition of flamethrower tanks' potential to alter the course of conflict, yet also warned of the moral and tactical costs. What lessons did this inferno teach the world about the limits of fortification, the psychology of fear, and the ethics of weaponry? And how might these shadows still influence modern warfare, hidden beneath layers of classified archives? In the final months of the Pacific War, the flamethrower tanks were deployed in increasingly desperate operations, their presence a grim symbol of the Allies' determination to break Japanese resistance at any cost. One particularly haunting photograph from May 1945 shows a lone tank silhouetted against a burning hillside on Okinawa, its flamethrowers still spewing tongues of fire into a network of caves below. Behind the image, a faint scrawl on the back reads, "Last light of the Inferno." Radio logs from that day capture frantic Japanese calls for reinforcements and medical aid, drowned out by the crackle of flame and the roar of exploding fuel. Despite mounting casualties on both sides, the Japanese high command continued to order static defense, clinging to the hope that their fortifications could hold. How did this stubborn adherence to outdated tactics affect the human cost of these battles? And what was the rationale behind sacrificing so many lives against a weapon designed to erase traditional defenses? The psychological warfare extended beyond the battlefield. Leaflets dropped over Japanese positions carried warnings of the flamethrower tanks' approach, urging surrender, but also warning of the horrors awaiting those who resisted. Survivors spoke of a creeping dread, a terror not just of death, but of being consumed alive by an unstoppable blaze. A rare surviving journal entry from a Japanese infantryman, smudged and partially burned, describes the hellish light cast by these tanks at night, a fire that turned the jungle into a nightmare landscape. Yet, beneath this terror lay a profound confusion. How could a weapon so devastating go largely unanticipated by the Japanese military intelligence? Did the secrecy surrounding the flamethrower tanks create a blind spot in Japan's defensive strategy, or was there a deeper failure to grasp the changing nature of modern warfare? On the American side, internal communications reveal an uneasy awareness of the moral ambiguity surrounding flamethrower tanks. Some officers expressed concern that the weapon's terrifying reputation might alienate local populations and fuel enemy resolve. A classified memorandum discusses whether the psychological impact justified the physical destruction, hinting at debates within the command about the weapon's future use. Meanwhile, maintenance crews struggled with the tank's complex fueling systems, often working under fire to keep the machines operational. A black and white photo from a forward repair depot shows mechanics covered in soot and sweat, their faces etched with exhaustion and apprehension. How did the men who operated and maintained these tanks reconcile their role in wielding such a fearsome weapon? And what does this reveal about the human cost hidden behind technological innovation in war? As the war ended, many flamethrower tanks were abandoned or destroyed, their crews disbanded and scattered. Yet, the scorched battlegrounds remained a silent testament to their brutal efficiency. Post-war investigations cataloged hundreds of destroyed Japanese fortifications, many bearing scorch marks, consistent with flamethrower use. Oral histories from local civilians describe villages reduced to ashes, survivors recounting the overwhelming heat and smoke. Despite this, official histories often downplayed the tank's role, focusing instead on infantry and naval artillery. Was this an attempt to sanitize the brutality of war, or a reflection of discomfort with the destructive power unleashed? And how has this selective memory shaped the legacy of the Pacific conflict in collective consciousness? In the shadows of these burned-out ruins, a deeper story lingers, one of innovation born in desperation, of fear weaponized into fire, and of a foe forced to confront a new kind of hell on Earth. The flamethrower tanks did not just burn bunkers, they burned the very assumptions of warfare, exposing vulnerabilities both physical and psychological. Yet much remains obscured in classified files and fading testimonies. What other secrets about these machines and their impact remain buried in the archives? And as modern conflicts echo with the advance of new, terrifying technologies, what warnings might this inferno from the past still hold for the future of war? Long after the battles ended, The remnants of flamethrower tanks lay scattered across the Pacific Islands, rusted hulks half swallowed by jungle growth, their twisted frames silent witnesses to a forgotten inferno. Among the scorched earth and shattered bunkers, local villagers found fragments of fuel canisters and scorched documents, relics of a war that had seared itself into the landscape. Decades later, historians uncovered testimonies from Allied veterans and Japanese survivors alike, revealing a shared trauma wrought by these incendiary machines. An engineer's faded memoir, discovered in a private collection, spoke candidly of the dual nature of the tanks, instruments of tactical brilliance, yet symbols of profound destruction. Were these machines merely tools of war, or did they represent a deeper rupture, a crossing of lines that would haunt combatants on both sides for generations? The war's end did not erase the shadows cast by the flamethrower tanks. In post-war Japan, survivors wrestled with memories of being trapped in burning bunkers, while American tank crews grappled with the moral weight of wielding such devastating power. Medical records from field hospitals document burns and trauma unlike any other, as well as the psychological scars borne by those who witnessed or operated these weapons. Yet, official narratives from both nations often skirted around the full horror, choosing instead to frame the conflict in terms of valor and strategy. Why did this collective silence persist? Was it a mechanism of healing, or a deliberate suppression to contain the unsettling truths of technological warfare? Today, a handful of preserved flamethrower tanks stand in military museums, their flame nozzles cold and silent, their fuel tanks empty. Visitors peer into armored compartments, sometimes unaware of the inferno these machines once unleashed. Archival footage, grainy and monochrome, flickers to life on screens, revealing moments of fire and fury that forever altered the Pacific theater. Still, questions linger beneath the surface. How did these weapons redefine the limits of combat? What lies beyond the visible scars of war, the fears, adaptations, and silences? And as new generations study these relics, what lessons do they carry about the price of innovation when fire becomes a weapon of war?